I propose that we discuss a little bit what this surprising result means for the economy. What are the early reaction to this shock on the other side of the Atlantic? So, Bart, please talk to us.
Yeah, well, what to say? Obviously, the result came as a bit of a surprise, and I think nobody had expected the way this election night had evolved. Not just in the fact that Trump won, but also the way that he won. He very clearly won on the Northern Belt states. That's where he really got his victory. And that shows that he has really appealed to a very large group of people who feel that they've been disadvantaged by the economy. I think one of the big questions that's going to be discussed in the next couple of days is why have the polls failed again after Brexit? And it really shows that somehow the polls failed to pick up those people who are apparently not in the samples, are not regularly voting and really turned out. So I think it's very clear to see the victory really is coming from the crowd that he has been speaking to, his core crowd, and that has pushed him across the line. There's a lot more to say about it, but I think that for the moment should suffice. The market reaction has actually also been quite surprising. We had predicted we would see a real Brexit scenario emerging immediately after. We saw some of that. S&P futures came down to 4.5% during the night, but actually started to recover, certainly in Europe. We saw some recovery during the day. The markets are not open yet in the US, so we still have to see. But if I watch the business media right now, there's a pretty upbeat kind of discussion that I've seen over the past 2 hours or so. Very focused on the domestic situation, very focused on the idea that, maybe finally things start moving, whether you like it or not, whether it's moving in the right direction, but at least things will get unlocked, because not only did Trump win the presidency, but the Republicans also won or kept control of both the House and the Senate. So things can start moving from a domestic perspective, and I think that gives actually a little bit of an upside in the U.S. There's no discussion here about the impacts for foreign policy and those kind of things, which of course have a much bigger impact on the European situation or the global situation. There's not much of a discussion there. Also, exchange rates, surprisingly, been seeing some effect. The Mexican peso has weakened a lot, but otherwise, most of the currencies in Europe actually stayed relatively strong. I think the next real question is what's going to happen now, and we first have to see what the tune of Trump is going to be. So his big dossiers that he's been talking about, like trade and immigration, what is the rhetoric gonna be changed into over the next couple of days? Is he becoming more reconciliatory? Is he putting this off a little until he has really decided what his options are? I think that is a very high probability. I think the two things to really watch in terms of quick action that he might take once he gets in office in January is taxes and healthcare. Those are the two things that he can very quickly appease the business sector, but also the electorate as a whole, by cutting taxes, by significantly changing Obamacare or even completely abolishing it. Both of these things he can do fairly quickly. I frankly think that's where the first action is going to be seen, not on the side of trade and immigration, which he's likely to postpone a bit. And that also, again, gives the sentiment here in the US. We'll see how this develops over the next few days. But for the moment, I would say, people say, okay, this is what it is. Let's see how we can make the best out of it if we can.
I have a couple of questions. First, a comment maybe. What you said, if it is true that the attention is going to be on taxes and healthcare at the beginning, then it means that not many changes should be expected on the European side. It will all be looking, inside the US and not outside. So no large impact on the EU, where we're actually still very busy with Brexit, so we will not get bored.
Well, if Trump delivers on his promise that he would cut corporate taxes to 15%, it would almost immediately turn the U.S. from one of the highest taxed countries for corporations to one of the lowest taxed countries. And I do think that has some implications, perhaps not immediate, but obviously, business then needs to think about, U.S. business is going to think about repatriating and what the advantages of that are going to be. So I think it could have some impact on capital flows, on foreign direct investment and so on. Not in January or February, but certainly this can have impact on decisions and strategic decisions in the next year or so.
Oh, actually, on what you said, I think maybe we can just have recall a quick number that you may be surprised to find out that the balance of foreign direct investment is positive on the EU side, on European side, meaning that Europe has more foreign direct investment in the US than vice versa. So this is
Sure, but the fact that we have foreign direct investment in Europe is creating a fair amount of jobs from U.S. companies, and the question is, will U.S. companies continue? The balance is going to change for U.S. companies in Europe relative to the U.S.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I also wanted to ask a question, and the question is, what do you think things will become more clear between now and the end of the year, that is before the presidency officially starts?
Oh yes, a lot of things will get clear. So first of all, the first thing to watch is his tone. His victory speech, I actually haven't watched it myself yet. By that time I'd gone to bed. But his victory speech was actually fairly reconciliating and not very aggressive. So we have just to see what the tone is going to be over the next couple of days. I think that's very important for setting the atmosphere and setting the environment, and will be determining also who he's going to take on his team. Rumors, but nothing is definitive here. And I think the composition of his team is going to be very, very important to understand which things he's going to care about more. So it's really listening now and seeing the appointments that he's going to make, see how aggressive he remains on trade and immigration. As I said, I expect he will be fairly quiet about it. He won't be entirely quiet, but I don't think that on 20 January he's going to immediately tear up NAFTA, for example, or anything like that. It's really going to be the domestic economy on which he wants to focus, because that's the way he can get the support that he needs in order to implement his agenda down the road.
Can we promise that we will know more by tomorrow at this time of the day, where we have the webcast precisely on this?
I think what we will know by tomorrow, of course, is we have then see one day of the markets being open in the US and see how US markets are going to react. Again, I mean, we could still see a Brexit scenario. Let's see how it is going to open up in a couple of minutes. I think that will already determine it. My expectation is we'll probably see some weakening. I would be surprised if we see a boost, although you never know. But at the moment, I do not expect a Brexit type of scenario. And that's surprising, because that is what we would have predicted in the case of Trump win. So that's a very interesting development.
There is a question from class.
So Bart, you mentioned that it might be sort of, well, maybe a silver lining is too much to say, but at least a positive thing that the Republicans now control the two houses, basically. So I guess you're meaning that the gridlock that we have in Washington is going to be less with that, maybe. But does that mean that is his party conducive to the policies that he wants to make? I mean, are they? I mean, he has a couple of he suggested a couple of policies that were pretty radical. So does that mean that they are all on board on that, or?
No, it's a good question, Klaas. I mean, first of all, the point was, as soon as he lost Florida early in the evening yesterday, it was clear. As soon as Clinton lost Florida, or it became clear that she was going to lose it, it was clear that she would not win the Senate, and that would be that if she even would make it into the White House, she would have a completely Republican Congress, and that would be gridlock. Now this has changed. Now we have Republicans everywhere. But you're totally right. We are not looking at one Republican Party. We're looking at multiples. We have the establishment, we have the Trump group, we have the Tea Party, and they have different opinions about, for example, the trade and the immigration dossier, which is another reason why I think he's not going to act on that immediately, because it will just increase the disagreements within the party. On taxes and on healthcare, they all agree. And I saw some establishment people this morning in the media already, and they were pretty upbeat. They obviously try to see if they can keep the party together and make sure that they can pursue an agenda. Again, I mean, there could be, in the short term, some growth effects from that. In the medium term, that's a whole different question, because it depends on the other dossiers. But in the short term, I would not be surprised if in the beginning of next year we see some upside in the U.S. economy.
Yeah. So you think he will focus first on the ones that he can make the most mileage of, so to say, in a quick period of time?
Yeah, I would think so, and I think that's important for business to watch out for. Now, it's very hard to predict. We're dealing here with a type of president that we've never seen before. So, I mean, again, it's hard to predict, but you would think that would be a very rational thing for him to do, and I think that's something for businesses to watch out for. Also for businesses in Europe, because again, I think the dynamics between Europe and the US can change. One question now, for example, is what this means for the raising interest rates in December. Some people are saying, this is significantly reducing the probability of the Fed doing this. On the other hand, I think the Fed will not want to show that they're very sensitive to the political scene. So given the fact that we're down the road of raising the interest rate in December, I still think they're likely to going to do that. But again, we'll see how that discussion is going to evolve over the next few days.